He saw blood around her door.
It was like an execution.
She just said, my mommy's not coming to get me.
Am I safe? Are my kids safe?
Somebody in that police department is not telling the truth.
People started threatening them.
We were running, and I got away from them.
Who can you trust?
I'm not scared of that.
I mean, at that point, what do you do?
How old were you in 87?
16.
Let's talk about that.
I don't know if I've met anybody more brave than this informant was. She showed strength in that trial, admit to things happening not only to Karina but to her that nobody wants to talk about. And we had finally had a look at what actually had happened to Karina Mullins that night. And it was just horrific.
So, tell the jury what happened.
Just when we're trying to get away from him. I couldn't.
Was he choking her with this bar?
We were rocking it back and forth.
Across her neck?
Yes.
He was holding this bar down on her neck.
Yes.
Central City, Kentucky is a very small town. Everyone keeps their doors unlocked, and everybody knows everybody.
It is more personalized. Everybody knows what this neighbor is doing, and of course you want to protect them.
It's a nice community-oriented town. And officers in this area are very much a part of the community. It's not only just crime prevention. They're there to assist people. They're the ones that somebody can call.
In spring of 1987, Karina Mullen moved to Central City. She wanted to get a new start for her and her 2-year-old daughter.
Karina was beautiful. Blonde hair, bright blue eyes, just like her father, Claude. Loved swimming, loved riding motorbikes, and she loved dancing. And she played the organ, like her mom, Pat. Her nickname was Reenie. Reenie's such a bubbly person, and just, my nickname was Motor Mouth for her. She's 20 years old, so she wanted to move out. Just like any, like young lady. She wanted to start her own life with her and her daughter.
Karina Mullen chose Central City, Kentucky, because her family lived so close. She had both her parents and her siblings living really close by, just up the road.
Reenie moved in with Angie Smith. They shared an apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. Kitchen, living room. Angie had a child about 6 months older than Reenie's daughter.
The two hadn't known each other that long, but they became fast friends because they were both single mothers, and they bonded that way.
She met Jimmy Springer, her boyfriend. She just loved Jimmy. And she wanted to get married and live happily ever after.
And she just really liked the feel of Central City. She wanted a place where everyone knew everyone, where everyone had their back. That's where she wanted her 2-year-old daughter to grow up.
On the morning of October 2nd, 1987, at the city garage, a worker came and there was a vehicle parked in an area that shouldn't have been.
I walked down and looked at it, and then when I got to the back passenger side, I noticed blood in the back, and I noticed some blood smudges on the back trunk and some blood on the bumper.
It wasn't a small amount. It wasn't a dab here, a dab there. It was a lot of blood.
I backed completely away. I got on my two-way radio and I hollered for Unit 1209, which is Billy Fields that worked for the police department.
The lead senior officer at the time for Central City Police Department was Lieutenant Billy Fields.
Billy Fields had been with the police department for a number of years. He was likable, professional, that he got along with just about everyone.
In small communities, a lieutenant has to be someone that people can trust, they can talk to. His life needs to be an open book. And I think Billy Fields was kind of put on a pedestal.
He was a big deal in Central City. People in the community trusted him.
Such an important part of anything that goes on in Central City.
Lieutenant Fields immediately knew whose car that belonged to. The license plate said Renee, which was the nickname for Karina Mullen. And they knew her car because she worked there.
Even though they saw blood on the bumper, blood on the door, blood in the seats, they needed the keys to get in their trunk.
So Lieutenant Billy Fields went to Karina Mullen's apartment, and her roommate, Angela Smith, let them inside. They noticed her room, the bedroom where Karina Mullen stayed, had blood around the door frame. Inside, what they saw was unbelievable. It was just a horrific crime scene.
It was just blood. On the wall, on the door, on the floor, on her bed. A lot of blood. Everybody was wondering where the baby was, but thank God she had stayed all night with her grandma and grandpa.
There was a lot of evidence that a very violent occurrence had occurred in that apartment that evening.
There was blood everywhere. There was things thrown about. But one thing that they didn't find was Karina Mullen's car keys. They head back to the scene of her car, and they proceed to Jimmy the trunk.
After they eventually opened the vehicle, they found Karina Mullen.
Police popped the lock to the trunk Saturday morning, finding the 20-year-old's badly beaten body inside.
The face was bruised, the body was bruised. It had been mutilated, and it was just a very horrific scene.
She had a 6-inch cut to her throat. Knife went through her knuckle, as if maybe she was fighting.
You could see the handprints on her legs. That's how hard they were being held.
It's just hard to believe something horrific like that happened to anyone, and especially our loved one. Renee's daughter was 2.5 years old, and she just let her head down, and she just said, "My mommy's not coming to get me." I mean, what could you do? You know, it just broke our hearts.
Autopsy results revealed that Karina Mullins basically went through total hell. When a young woman is so brutally beaten and left in the middle of town in her trunk, that raises a lot of questions in a small town. Am I safe? Are my kids safe? Is there a crazy murderer running around?
Well, what happened between the time that she left the apartment until we discovered the body, we haven't released it off yet.
Generally, a police department that's not really used to handling large homicides, the state police are brought in. That didn't happen in this case.
Officers in small towns, you're stretched to a limit. But if you're investigating a crime that involves someone you know, just human nature, that you want to work harder.
Lieutenant Billy Fields was hell-bent on solving this case himself.
Do you have any suspects?
We do have suspects, yes.
How many?
I'm not at liberty to reveal that at this point.
He wanted to be the one to make the arrest. He wanted to be the one to bring justice to this town. And he interviewed Jimmy Springer almost immediately because he was Karina Mullen's boyfriend.
In a killing like that of Miss Mullen, I'd say 9 chances out of 10, the boyfriend is a prime suspect. And 9 chances out of 10 that they're guilty party.
Jimmy Springer said that he went out with friends and he had some drinks and he did some drugs at the time. He says he did go into the apartment, but he saw blood around her door. The door was locked, and so he became concerned and left the apartment and went looking for her. He then didn't find her, so he drove around before he went to a friend's house and crashed.
For someone who supposedly loved Renee so much, when he went over there that evening and saw blood on Renee's bedroom door and the door was locked, and then he leaves. He don't check on her, and then a few hours later, she was dead in the trunk of her car.
Then there was a witness that came forward to police stating that there was someone that was behind the wheel of Karina Mullen's car driving through town that night. And it was Jimmy Springer. Lieutenant Fields focused on Jimmy Springer to try to start gathering evidence and to make a case.
Jimmy Springer was just an average local boy.
With Jimmy Springer, there was a lot of talk that he wasn't the greatest of people and that he didn't treat Karina that great. There were rumors about his drug use, his drug involvement, but also rumors about his jealousy and possibly some violent or at least aggressive behavior toward Karina.
Someone had reported that Karina was upset with Jimmy Springer. They had had somewhat of an argument that night.
Billy Fields said that they spoke with Jimmy and said his knuckles were swollen and there was cuts on it. When they asked him, he said, well, he'd been cutting wood. We felt that Jimmy Springer was involved because how he acted, how he responded to her death. It was very unusual for somebody that loves you.
I think both the police and the community questioned Jimmy Springer's account of what happened that night. And so Lieutenant Billy Fields started interviewing everyone around the crime scene, primarily the people that knew her and the people that lived close to her.
Well, we want to know what we've got. We can't go out and arrest someone unless we've got the evidence to back it up.
One of the first people that Billy Fields talked to was Angela Smith, her roommate. Angela Smith said that she and Karina went to a bar. They had several drinks. She said they both actually had some Valium as well. They then came back to their apartment. They watched a little bit of TV before heading to their respective bedrooms. And Angela said that she was so tired that she just kind of passed out in her bedroom and she didn't hear a thing that happened that night.
It was a very small apartment. I don't think it's any way possible that someone in that room could have not heard what was going on.
You have to wonder if what she's telling is the truth.
Angie, I believe there's no way she couldn't have heard it. But I'm sure she was scared. For fear that it's going to happen to her or her child.
Pretty early in this investigation, Lieutenant Billy Fields interviewed Jeffrey Boyd.
It was reported that the day of the murder that Jeff Boyd was seen threatening Karina Mullins at a local restaurant with a firearm.
Jeffrey Boyd was well known in Central City, and he was known as one of the most dangerous people in the town.
Jeff was known for a lot of crimes and in prison. He was very scary to a lot of people. He was, 6 foot and weighed a lot. They didn't want to cross him.
A witness said that they heard Jeffrey Boyd threaten her with a gun. So you would think he could not be ruled out at this point.
Renee's roommate, Angie and Jeff Boyd, had gone together, so that was awful suspicious.
Even though Jeff Boyd was seen threatening Karina Mullins. He was not, I guess, considered a suspect or wasn't really seriously looked at, and so there's no evidence presented by Lieutenant Fields to charge against Jeff Boyd.
A lot of people wonder why Jeffrey Boyd wasn't arrested, but the police thought most of the eyewitness evidence that they had in the case pointed toward Jimmy Springer at the time, and that is who Lieutenant Field honed in on.
Lieutenant Fields felt there was circumstantial evidence to arrest Jimmy Springer.
Jimmy Springer was arrested and charged with murder just a couple of months after Karina Mullins' death.
When I first met Billy, he was concerned, wanting to help us. He was nice. He kept telling us, oh yeah, we're checking this out, we're doing this, we're doing that. They wanted it solved. When Jimmy went to trial, we was hoping that was the end of it.
The key evidence against Jimmy Springer was two females who allegedly saw him in Karina's car that night. But the evidence against him was not strong.
One of the witnesses said that in the beginning she thought it was Jimmy Springer, but then she decided she was wrong and realized that the person driving Rainey's car was too short.
There was not sufficient evidence brought for a conviction, and he was acquitted by the jury.
When someone is acquitted of murder, they can never be retried again. So this was a huge disappointment and blow to not only the family of Karina Mullins, but also Lieutenant Billy Fields.
After he was acquitted, we was just like, this can't be true. This can't be going on. I was very angry. There's no way he could be innocent in every aspect of this.
I think the Mullins families were under the belief, after having seen the trial, that there were other perpetrators that have not yet been brought to justice, and they wanted that to occur.
Well, after it happened, Billy Fields came over and said that there needed to be justice for Rainey and that they weren't going to quit. Pat and Claude and I was never going to stop until we found somebody to pay for what they did.
Time went on, you felt like the prosecution and the police blew it. That they had their guy and they let him go. But there were rumors that there might have been a reason why law enforcement presented a less than adequate case.
At that point, we just felt like something dirty's going on here.
I think it's fair to say that at the acquittal, that the investigation by Lieutenant Fields and the Central City Police Department ended. Once the case goes cold and there's no further investigation, the perpetrators, they're getting further and further away from justice being served.
We were grieving so bad, and we needed answers. And, we weren't going to let it go.
Claude Mullins didn't feel like he had justice for his daughter, so he called police every day demanding answers.
Billy Fields had come over and sat at the table, talked to him, and, tried to be, we care about your family, we're not going to let it go. And, I guess tried to be nice.
Claude and Lieutenant Billy Fields worked side by side on a lot of this. He sat down at his table with him. He got in deep with him.
I think Claude felt that there had to be something out there that we could find. I mean, there had to be truth out there about what they did to Rainey. So he just kept on going, but nothing came of it.
In December of 1988, a year after her death, the police actually returned Karina Mullins' car to her father, Claude.
They brought the car back over there. Claude started searching the car and felt under the seat. There was the knife. blood on it, hair on it.
That's huge. This could be the murder weapon. Why didn't the police find it?
It's like, what was they doing? Were they really looking for this? Evidently they weren't, or they would have found it.
How could something like this even happen?
At that time, Billy Fields was the one who was responsible to make sure that the evidence got to where it was supposed to go, that it got tested correctly.
I asked Billy, I said, where's the list? What list? I said, the list, inventory list. You know, when you search a car, you're supposed to do an inventory list. And he didn't have one. We thought, okay, they're very incompetent. Evidently, they don't know what they're doing. Part of us sometimes thought, we're not getting answers from anyone. They're not helping.
Initially, I think Claude Mullen fully believed that Lieutenant Fields would solve this crime and that the person would be put away. But as things somewhat went cold, until a couple of years later, and that's when the Muhlenberg County Sheriff's Department got involved.
When I first heard about Karina's murder, my first reaction was, is this really true what we're hearing? Something has to be done. So when I took office in 1990, a priority of mine was to reopen a case. The way she was beaten and found in the trunk of her car, it was almost somewhat like an execution. Miss Mullen's father came to my office several times. He wanted answers, and he was adamant, but we got to find who did this. I remember watching him cry. And it was hard to watch. And my main thing was this had to be made right.
Once the Muhlenberg County Sheriff's detectives got involved, they were surprised at some of the anomalies that they were running into.
We came up against a great deal of challenges. People, one minute they would say they wanted to meet with us, the next minute, no, I'll change my mind.
They were hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall.
I always believed people knew something, but they were afraid to talk.
The lead investigator in the case noticed that a lot of the evidence was either gone, misplaced, mislabeled. It was all over the place.
They went to the Citrus City Police Department to look at what evidence they had. The evidence gathered was not maintained as it should have been. During the original investigation by Billy Fields, the rape kit was performed on Karina's body. The rape kit was held by the medical examiner's office in Louisville, and at no point did anyone come and pick it up. They went to the lab itself to find out if there were any lab reports that they could use, and found out not only the evidence was never tested, but it was returned to Lieutenant Fields and was missing from that point.
It's like, okay, where's the evidence at? Why can't we see the evidence?
You start to question certain things about what's going on. It's either incompetence or malice of trying to destroy evidence that could be used.
You stop and think, somebody maybe in that police department is not telling the truth.
When you have a case where it's rumored that there might be reasons why information is being kept quiet, people are scared to come forward because they're scared of what will happen if they do. So people wondered, could Lieutenant Billy Fields have knowledge about who did this? And that's when the Muhlenberg County Sheriff's Department started getting death threats, that people started calling them and threatening them.
I was home, and the phone rang, and a male voice, gave me a warning. Get off this Mullins case if you know what's good for you. And I said, well, what do you mean what's good for me? And he said, well, you know, you wouldn't want to find your sons, your wife, or yourself in the river. I felt like I was in dangerous waters, very dangerous waters.
Once the investigation was reopened by the Muir County Sheriff's Office, they found some items new that were relevant to the case, but not enough to keep the case ongoing. And so eventually it was back into the code status again.
At the Central City Police Department, there was rumors that there was some influential people involved in a crime syndicate.
There's rumors going around about, at that time, Billy Fields and Jeff Boyd. A lot of it was saying it had to do with drugs.
Drugs in Central City was a problem. Jeff Boyd was well known in the area for his activity.
It was Jeff Boyd that was seen threatening Karina Mullins the day of the murder.
So for Lieutenant Billy Fields to be friends with someone like Jeff Boyd, that's unimaginable.
What exactly is going on here?
I think that a lot of times these police officers can become corrupted, and then the continual use of that power or corruption can move people into doing things that they never thought they'd do.
Billy ended up leaving the force because there was so much commotion going on about him and being involved in the drugs and all that. So it ended up he finally resigned.
You have to ask, if Billy Fields was corrupt, then who else has he been covering for? Does he know who killed Karina Mullins? In 2005, nearly 20 years after Karina Mullins' murder, Lieutenant Billy Fields was no longer working for the Central City Police Department. But that's when an informant came forward with information that would blow this case wide open.
An investigator with the Kentucky State Police was investigating a cold case out of Hopkins County. And at some point he was told that a informant may have information concerning a murder, and he was thinking that was the murder that he was investigating.
The informant talked about events that had happened when they were 16 years old.
Decided to put her in the truck. After they put her in the truck, that's whenever told me to drive.
And when the detective started piecing things together, he realized that she was talking about the death of Karina Mullins.
This informant directly contradicted everything Angela Smith had told investigators about what had occurred in that apartment that evening.
I just remember arguing, going all back and forth, getting on her and stuff, and her arguing back and everything.
She knew things that she couldn't have possibly known.
You said a silver bar thing. What was this?
I just remember something being long, about like this. Silver.
Was he choking her with this bar?
He was rocking it back and forth.
Across her neck?
Yes.
He was holding this bar down on his neck.
Yes.
It is impossible to overestimate the importance of the testimony of the informant in solving this case. Right after she gave her statement, the officers involved decided it was to go to the county attorney and bring charges.
Kentucky State Police investigators are usually tight-lipped during an investigation, but once they've made an arrest, they're quick to tell you about it. And so we learned quickly that multiple arrests had been made in the Karina Mullins case. They arrested the roommate, Angela Smith. They arrested Jimmy Kramer, who was actually a friend of Karina Mullins' boyfriend, Jimmy Springer. Jeffrey Boyd and Jimmy Springer also faced charges.
We really felt that from the beginning that Jimmy was involved, Jeff Boyd, Angie, by no way. We didn't know about Jimmy Kramer, but we felt finally, somebody's going to listen, and finally somebody's going to do something about it.
At the time of the crime, Angela Smith said that she just kind of passed out in her bedroom and she didn't hear a thing that happened that night. But according to the informant, that's not the truth.
You remember where Angela Smith was at the time?
All I can remember her in that corner just screaming. That's all I can remember about her.
Angela Smith was obviously giving false statements to police officers. She was obviously complicit to some or all of what happened to Karina Mullen.
So after the arrest, other people started to come forward. And one of the possible motives that came up is that Karina Mullen had actually talked to a police officer at the Central City Police Department about Jeffrey Boyd and her boyfriend, Jimmy Springer's involvement in drug dealing and some other illegal activity.
A lot of people thought Art knew that drugs was going on and that Jimmy Springer was involved taking the drugs and stuff too. Renee didn't want it. She didn't like drugs. She didn't want to be around it. Didn't want her child to be around it.
There was some indication that Karina Mullen had reported that Jimmy Springer, along with Jeff Boyd and another individual, were involved in a drug stolen property ring, a theft ring, and then also the trafficking of drugs. Principally cocaine was what the allegation was.
We believe that Renee got herself into a situation that she was unaware of.
It was quickly rumored that the reason Jeffrey Boyd threatened her in a restaurant is that she had come forward to police with information regarding his illegal actions.
I think that gave motive to Jeff Boyd and whoever else. They just had to put a stop to it.
That's when, out of nowhere, they arrested Lieutenant Billy Fields. But the biggest shock of all was yet to come.
Nobody wants to think that the police officer would take part in something like this. Nobody would want to think that.
Do you have any suspects?
We do have suspects, yes.
How many?
I'm not at liberty to reveal that.
If he's covering up for the people that did this, how far does that cover up go?
Billy Fields, in his position as a police officer and as the lead investigator in this case, had directed the investigation away from him and his friends and kept it under a certain amount of control.
He was the first person to respond to the car. He went to the crime scene afterward. He handled the evidence.
You just think, this is a police officer. They're supposed to be there for your protection. It was kind of devastating when you find out that he was involved.
When you have a crime of this magnitude, something that was so violent, you could not understand why the roommate didn't hear anything. You couldn't understand why the neighbors didn't see anything. You couldn't understand why no one was coming forward. But it all kind of made sense when you put together the fact that the lead investigator in the case, he had skin in the game. He was looking out for himself.
Billy, being an authority that he is, he watched the investigation. The evidence, he made sure it wasn't there. He used Jimmy Springer as a scapegoat, I feel. It was like, let's blame it on him and take the focus off of us. Because he didn't want to be caught.
A lot of that evidence was missing. But you can look at the fact that the last person that signed it out was the person that's being accused. It suddenly makes sense as to why it took so long for it to be solved. Jimmy Kramer, Jeffrey Boyd, and Lieutenant Billy Fields were all charged with kidnapping, rape, sodomy, and murder.
Fields had the additional charge of tampering with physical evidence. Felt like we had a good, strong case.
Would it have been important to have the hair that was found in Miss Mullen's vehicle?
Yes, it would have.
How about the blood that was taken from the vehicle, samples of the blood? Would that be important with regard to your investigation?
It'd be something you compare.
against your suspect.
Were you given the opportunity to have those tested?
No.
We brought a lot of witnesses in. I did all of the examination and cross-examination, including the informant.
How old were you in 87?
16.
Let's talk about that.
I don't know if I've met anybody more brave than this informant was. She showed strength in that trial, admit to things happening not only to Karina but to her that nobody wants to talk about. And we had finally had a look at what actually had happened to Karina Mullins that night. And it was just horrific.
So, tell the jury what happened.
The informant said that she lived in Central City, Kentucky. In the early hours of October 2nd, she spotted a police car.
How many people were in that car, Yes.
There was 2.
She said in that car was Lieutenant Fields and Jeffrey Boyd.
Walk over to that car and I put my arm on the door.
She's talking to Billy, like kind of leaning in on the window. And at that point, Jeff got out.
When I got my arm, the other one got out, come around and put me in the back.
And then they took her to the apartment where Renee was.
How did you feel at this moment?
I was scared to death.
She was taken forcibly into the apartment.
Who was there when you walked into the apartment?
Karina, another female.
Do you know who that was?
I do now. I mean, Angela.
And there were 2 other men in the apartment, and that was Karina Mullins' boyfriend, Jimmy Springer, and another man, Jimmy Kramer.
She said that when Billy walked in the door, he had a bar and was hitting his hand. It was a crowbar or something.
They go to arguing back and forth. Billy and her, Jeff and her.
She described Billy Fields and Karina were in an argument.
He said, "You and B, I told you better keep your mouth shut or you know what would happen to you."
I just remember Billy grabbing her, pulling on her.
Renee took off running to her bedroom.
Told her that he was going to make sure that she got what she desired.
Who said that?
Billy.
The informant said that after she witnessed essentially the gang rape and torture and beating of Karina Mullen, she then gang raped herself.
At the time, I didn't even know really what sex was.
What was Karina doing at this time?
She couldn't do nothing.
The informant was obviously terrified.
Just remember trying to get away from him. I couldn't.
She didn't know what to do, what was happening, why she was there.
They put her in the back seat first, and decided to put her in the truck. That's whenever they told me to drive.
Who told you to drive?
Billy.
Lieutenant Fields made her drive Karina Mullen's car into the city with her body in the trunk.
She said that she just opened the door, pulled the keys, and took off running. And they weren't able to hold on to her.
I remember running. I remember throwing the keys. And I got away from him.
Jeffrey Boyd and Lieutenant Billy Fields were found guilty of kidnapping and rape. While Kramer is also convicted of manslaughter, Boyd and Fields are sent down for murder. Because of Jimmy Springer's earlier acquittal, he could not be charged with murder. Ultimately, he was set free. Angela Smith was found guilty of perjury because her initial story was that she heard nothing. In addition to those charges that Lieutenant Fields already faced, he also was found guilty of evidence tampering.
Officers, they have immense power. You get officers that feel like when they put that badge on and that gun, they are the law, and they're not. Just because you have a badge and a gun doesn't make you a good law enforcement officer. There are bad ones, and Billy Fields is a perfect example.
Last week, Renee would have been 57 years old. It's just kind of hard to comprehend her being that old. You know, I'd like to be able to see her and see her with her. See her with her grandkids. But it ain't gonna happen.
His whole life was practicing medicine.
It was nobody else that would have done that. It was him.
Dr. Mann took an oath to help people and to do no harm.
It's just evil. I could never imagine how far he could go.